Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today in this video, I'm going to discuss all of the books that I read in the month of November 2022. In the month of November, I read 5 books and I also DNF'd one for a total of 1,356 pages read, not including the DNF. I think I read like 100-ish pages of that one, like 75 to 100, and an average star rating of 4 stars out of 5, an even 4 out of 5. The first book I read was actually not on my November TBR. This was a book that I put on my TBR in September or October, I believe, and I never got to it. However, on October 31st, I had finished my entire October TBR, so I wanted to start another book until my November TBR was posted. So I ended up reading The Shape of Darkness by Laura Purcell. I gave this book 4 stars. So this book is a Victorian Gothic murder mystery set in 1800s Bath. The main character, Agnes, uses her career as a silhouette artist to support her mother and her nephew. However, with photography now coming into popularity, her business is not doing well. And it's especially not doing well when multiple people who have posed for her are found murdered. So is it possible that this killer is targeting her business? For help, Agnes enlists this young albino girl named Pearl, who is a spirit medium. Pearl is a young girl with seemingly supernatural gifts, and her older sister, who is basically the surrogate mother figure in her life because her mother died giving birth to Pearl. Her sister is telling her, you know, we need to keep holding these seances because this is what's going to support our family. But connecting with the spirit world actually takes a devastating physical toll on Pearl, and so she doesn't really want to keep doing the seances anymore, but she is at the same time desperate to connect with the spirit of her mother because her entire life, Pearl's sister has never really fully forgiven Pearl for, you know, quote unquote killing their mother. If you are looking for a book with those Gothic Victorian vibes, 100% you should pick this one up. I liked how the book kind of kept you guessing a little bit, like, is Pearl actually able to talk with spirits? Like, surely this is not possible, but also these strange things keep happening. And it's also a pretty short read, so it is one that you could get through pretty quickly. I all in all enjoyed this book while I was reading it. I think it was the perfect book for that Halloween spooky time of year because of its darkness and mystery. I will say I remember thinking the ending was a bit too convoluted because the author tries to pull off a couple different twists, and I feel like maybe she was doing a bit too much. I think the first twist was fine enough on its own, and the way the book ended, it was just a little bit weird and confusing. I will also say that while I enjoyed this book while I was reading it, I'm already starting to forget it, so I don't think it was the most memorable and definitely not an all-time favorite. But if you are into this sort of thing, I definitely think this is a great atmospheric Gothic read. Next, I read The Daughter of Time by Josephine Tey. Now, Josephine Tey was a Golden Age mystery author. She was writing around the same time as Agatha Christie, and this book is part of her series featuring Detective Inspector Alan Grant of Scotland Yard. This is, I think, actually the 5th book in the series, but I wanted to pick this one up because the premise really intrigued me. In this book, Inspector Grant has been injured, so he is stuck in his hospital room, and he wants something to occupy his mind while he is unable to work. So a friend of his suggests, why don't you try to solve a historical mystery? And Inspector Grant decides that he wants to investigate the disappearance of the 2 princes in the tower, who are widely believed to have been murdered by their uncle, King Richard III. Because I am very, very interested in Richard III, and I have been ever since I watched the miniseries The White Queen several years ago, I thought this would be a great book for me. I've always found Richard to be a really interesting historical figure, and he definitely has a lot more positive qualities than people give him credit for. I'm not gonna say he was a saint by any means, but a lot of people think of him as the character Shakespeare created, when really Richard III by Shakespeare is Tudor-era propaganda. It's a great play and all, don't get me wrong, but it's not an accurate depiction of Richard III. I still haven't told you what I rated this book, but those are the reasons why I really wanted to read this one, even though I didn't know if the Inspector Grant series as a whole was something I was super interested in. I have to say though, I ended up giving this book 5 stars. I really loved it. I don't think it's for everyone necessarily, because it's not the most fast-paced or exciting book. I don't know if Inspector Grant ever leaves his hospital room once in the entire novel, so it's not a book that's going to have a lot of action. It's really just him reading different historical texts and having people come to visit him, and then him asking them to get things for him to aid him in his investigation of Richard III's life and the disappearance of the princes. But as someone who is very interested in Richard III and also loves mysteries, I thought this book was so unique and it really interested me. This book is not necessarily what you think of when you think of a mystery, because it's just a guy in bed solving a crime that took place centuries before. But I thought it was really interesting, and I think one of the major themes of this book is that history is written by the victors, and you know, your perceptions of people and events are really colored by who is telling the story. And there are a lot of misconceptions that are commonly believed but aren't actually the truth. I think this book also builds a really interesting case as to why Richard III might have been innocent of the murders of his nephews, and I really like how it tried to redeem this hated historical figure, and it did bring up some of the more positive qualities of his that I personally have always been really interested in. I also can't help but sympathize with Richard III a little bit, because there were a lot of good things about him that nobody gives him credit for, and a lot of people believe he did things that he 100% did not do. Had Richard not died when he did, who knows what he could have done as king. He was reform-minded in certain aspects. He was working to reform the justice system in England at that time, and he's not the one-dimensional monster people think that he was, and who knows how his story would have been told if someone different had triumphed at the Battle of Bosworth. The Tudors just absolutely assassinated his character because he was their political rival, and when you take the throne by force, you want to make yourself look good, and the person you took the throne from look bad. Did he potentially murder his nephews? Yes. Like, let's just be honest. The circumstances are very suspicious, and people in the 1400s were not above killing their political rivals to get power for themselves. But I do also at the same time think there are some valid points against his guilt, like for instance, if he murdered his nephews to legitimize his own claim to the throne, why did he never publicly announce that they were dead? Because if you kill someone, but don't let the world at large know they are no longer alive, there is nothing stopping a pretender from showing up in the future and claiming to be the person you murdered. That's exactly what happened, and Henry VII, the king after Richard III, had to deal with people showing up in England claiming they were one of the princes in the tower coming for their throne. So why murder them and then not tell people they're dead? It kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it? I'm kind of rambling a bit now, but As a Richard III lover and a mystery lover, I thought this book's concept was really creative and it was different from any other mystery I've ever read before. That's why I ended up giving it 5 stars. I also really liked the character of the history student who helps Inspector Grant with his research. I thought he was a sweet kid and kind of funny. So maybe I need to read more Josephine Tey now. Maybe I really love her. If any of you out there have read her other books, do let me know. Do you think they are worth my time? Should I go back and read the Inspector Grant series from the beginning? Do let me know in the comments. Next, I read 3 books for my reading vlog on Can We Trust Goodreads recommendations. I read 3 books that the Goodreads algorithm recommended to me based on my reading tastes, and I discuss all of those books thoroughly in that vlog, so do check it out for my full thoughts. I will link it in the card. First, I read A Taste for Poison, 11 Deadly Molecules and the Killers Who Used Them by Neil Bradbury. This was a 4-star read for me. This is a non-fiction book discussing 11 different poisons, the physical effects they have on the human body, and examples of killers who used these on their victims, or attempted killers who attempted to murder people using these poisons. And some of these true crime stories that Bradbury includes in this book were very, very interesting. You can hear more of my thoughts in the vlog, but I thought this was a really good recommendation for me, and I really enjoyed it overall. It ended up being my favorite book in the video. Unfortunately, I, in that video, ended up DNFing The Stolen Lady by Laura Morelli. This is a historical fiction novel that takes place in 2 timelines, one set in Renaissance Florence and the other set in World War II era France. What's linking the 2 timelines together is the Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci, and you also get some chapters from Leonardo's perspective as he is working on the painting. I do not really like World War II era fiction. It's just not my favorite historical time period, but I wanted to give this a shot to see if maybe I'm just being too hard on World War II. It'd been a while since I read anything about it, so I thought maybe I'll end up really liking it. Also, I am very interested in Renaissance Florence, Medici era Florence, and so I thought that timeline would make the book for me, even if I didn't like the World War II storyline. Unfortunately, I found both timelines extremely boring. The characters in this did not connect with me. The budding romance storyline did not connect with me. And I feel like the author was trying to cover such large periods of time that there were some potentially very interesting events she was kind of just summarizing, which was very disappointing. This book did not work for me at all, and I really didn't want to DNF it. I wanted to give it a fair shot, but it was putting me in a reading slump. Yeah, this was not for me, but maybe one of you would like it. It just wasn't my thing. And the last book that I read for that vlog was Death at La Fenice by Donna Leon. This is the first in a detective series set in Venice, Italy, and I ended up giving this book 3 stars. My favorite thing about this book was the descriptions of Venice, and I think it was very interesting to think about Venice from the perspective of someone who calls Venice their permanent home, and to think about what it would be like to live in this very famous touristy city. Now, the murder mystery plot of this book follows the suspicious death of a famous conductor at the La Fenice Opera House in Venice, and Commissario Brunetti, the main character in the series, is investigating the crime. I thought the murder mystery plotline was just okay. Like, it was fine. There was nothing that was really wrong with it, but it also did not make me fall in love with the series or the characters. I do not think I will continue this series. Also, this book was written in 1992, and there were a few passing comments about lesbians or women in same-sex relationships that really just came across like it was sexualizing them in a gross way I did not appreciate. And finally, in November, I read The September Society by Charles Finch. This is the second of his Charles Lennox mysteries, and I gave this book 4 stars. This series is set in 1860s Victorian London, following the main character, Charles Lennox, a man of means and genius armchair sleuth. In this book, Lennox is hired by a woman whose son has mysteriously disappeared from his room at the University of Oxford campus. Lennox goes back to his alma mater to investigate, and he finds a very suspicious scene in the missing boy's room, including a dead cat and a card that has the name The September Society on it. Who exactly are the September Society, and how might they have played a role in this young man's disappearance? These are not among my all-time favorite books, but I do think the Charles Lennox mysteries are pretty fun and easy to read, so if you are interested in the historical mystery genre, I think these books are worth checking out. They are not among my all-time favorites, but I think they are very easy to read and just, you know, fun books that I can read, I can enjoy, and then I can move on to the next one. I think the central mystery of this book was pretty interesting. I was on the right track about where it was going, but I did not work out all the specifics. All in all, the mystery kept me pretty engaged, and we also see more of the romance between Charles Lennox and his childhood best friend, Lady Jane, in this book. I will say I wish their romance could have been a little bit more of a slow burn, and we could have let it develop a little bit more before the things that happened in this book happened. But all in all, I thought this was an enjoyable read, and it's worth checking out if you're into this sort of thing. So everyone, those are all the books that I read in the month of November. I am also still reading Murder of a Medici Princess by Carolyn P. Murphy. This was on my November TBR, and I did not finish it. I've read over 100 pages, so I'm gonna carry this over to December. So far, I am enjoying it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you're still here and you don't know what to comment, how about leave a sparkle emoji down in the comment section? My social media links are down below if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a splendid rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you next time.